Hello and welcome to the third of the Lancaster University Students' Union full-time officer debates. This debate is on the Vice President in Welfare and Community. My name is Alex George. I am the Head of News here at Berwick FM. I'm joined by four of our candidates. One of them hasn't been able to make it. That is... sorry, someone remind me. Seth. Who they have sent me their manifesto, and I'll be going over that shortly. But at the moment, I'm joined with Anna Kettle, Emily Delaney, Hazel Richardson, and Mariam Ahmed. So just to start things off, guys, you can have 1 to 2 minutes just to introduce yourselves and to go over the major points of your manifesto. So I guess go around this way. So we'll start with Anna.
Fantastic. Always great to be first. Hi. I don't know which way I was supposed to be looking. Hi, my name is Anna. I'm a third year philosophy and politics student. I'm kind of running on 5 main things. So the first is a move towards better long-term support for mental health. Currently, our students are having to wait until they reach crisis point to access emergency support on campus, and this just isn't attainable. We can't allow this to carry on, and so more support. Words are really hard. More of a move towards long-term support. Secondly is more support in academia, so working with departments to help identify students who are struggling, but also more support for academic reps. It can be really scary to go to a faculty forum and stand up to your department, and I know from personal experience it's really easy to be shouted down, and so we need to be giving our academic reps more support and backing with this. Thirdly is creating a safer, more inclusive environment on campus. So working with part-time officers like Hazel who do really good work, just to support them because they are the students that know best what is happening and the issues that affect those liberation groups. Fourthly is more support for postgraduate students. I say more support. Currently there is barely any support for our postgraduate students. Even really little things that seem kind of obvious, but we don't have one joined up policy for maternity or childcare, which is a real, very real thing affecting PhD students on our campus. And finally, tackling commercialisation, the increased commercialisation of universities. So lobbying higher management and working with groups like Lucy Living and city councillors to try and see a freeze to housing prices in the end of piecemeal tuition fee increases, and just kind of finally, for the first time in years, having a politically active full-time officer team.
Brilliant. Yeah. Thank you, Anna. We'll now move on to Emily.
Yeah, I'll try and follow that. I'm Emily. I was a welfare officer for 2 years for Pendle JCR, and during that time I didn't receive kind of any interaction from the student union, from the Vice President of Welfare and Community at the the 2 times that they were there. When I first got into welfare, I kind of thought that they'd be my first port of call. I'd have loads of time with them, and that all of the welfare officers, liberation groups, cultural and religious societies, basically anyone that wants to get involved, academic reps, like Anna just said, which I hadn't considered, but that's a very good point, that we'd all come together, work together on issues on campus, and kind of work cohesively to find solutions to those. And I've not seen any of that in the past 2 years. There's been a few welfare summits and a few meetings here and there, but ultimately I think it should be something that's quite ongoing if it's something that should work. So I'm proposing bi-weekly meetings in which welfare officers, liberation groups, everyone I just said basically, can get together. We can all work together on these issues, find solutions for them. They can be better advertised. For instance, if representative from LGBTQ turn up, they've got an event on, and they want more people to come to it. If there's other welfare officers or anyone else, they can simply say, okay, that would work for your group. A lot of people in your group might want to come to that, but if you involve this, that might open it up to a bit more, a few more people on campus. And even little things as in, if they've got resources, advertisements, anything, they can hand that to welfare officers in these meetings. They go back, welfare officers in every college know exactly what's going on, who to turn to, who's in what liberation group, so they know who to send everyone. And they can put them advertisements up, and they're just in that, as simple as it is, a lot more campaigns and ideas are much further spread and can easily be worked on. Furthermore, a lot of welfare officers don't receive any kind of support at all. When I was welfare officer, I found it quite difficult. I was going crying to my wellbeing advisor, Sarah Pendle, every 2 weeks, and I don't think that's fair on the wellbeing advisors because a lot of them have to work with students that have issues. So I have said that I will personally be their welfare officer, but I will work very hard to make sure they've got a better link with their SCRs, because a lot of colleges, Pendle's lucky we have a very good link with our SCR, other colleges not so much. it would be very helpful, obviously, for them. They've got someone to speak to, and ultimately they don't go in with any training. And like I said, I've been in the job 2 years. I'm more than happy to sit down with them whenever they need it, the beginning of the year, in these meetings, and say, this is what you need to do. This is what happens if someone comes to you with this issue. This is where you go for this. If welfare officers are better equipped and better informed, then maybe that might take a little more pressure off of other services such as wellbeing advisors or the on-campus counselling service, if welfare officers could kind of deal with these issues before they got to crisis level.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Hazel.
Hi, I'm Hazel. I'm a second year Politics and International Relations student, and I'm currently the LGBTQ plus part-time officer, which is what really made me want to go for this role, kind of working a bit more closely with the FTOs. I've got 4 main points on my manifesto. So the first is surrounding welfare. I feel like there are so many different places you can go for welfare, but it's really hard to know where you're supposed to go to for which issue, and you sort of look around and I don't know, I tend to panic a bit when I go, there's too many choices, and then not go for anything. So one of my big key points is I want to be able to actually collate all this information about the college wellbeing services, the counselling service, the different welfare support available elsewhere, all into one thing, and make sure that everybody has that as their welfare go-to to work out where you should go. I've got sustainability is another big thing. So campus is starting to develop a lot. There's the health and innovation bit down near the front of the sports centre. As that begins to develop, I'd really like to lead some talks with the developers on making sure that it is still sustainable, because that's a really big selling point of us being a green university, and it would be a real shame if we lost that, and shame for the environment as well.
Of course.
Food sustainability is another consideration. A lot of students are wanting to eat fresh food and trying really hard, and it's just really hard to eat an entire huge box of bananas or whatever it is in a week before they go off. So working with things like the Community Fridge Project, I feel like that would be a really good thing to promote further and expand if we can, as well as looking at things like budget-friendly recipe cards and things like that you can hand out in freshers packs or at the Students' Union for people to use. In terms of community, I think the We Are Lancaster project that's been going in the last year or so has been brilliant, and I think we should continue with that. I also think that it's really important for liberation groups such as Students with Disabilities or LGBTQ+ and Women's Plus Forum to still have a voice if nobody runs for their part-time officer positions, because currently we don't have a Students with Disabilities part-time officer, and as a consequence of that they no longer have a representative voice in the Students' Union, which is ridiculous. So we need to put in place some system that they can still be heard. And lastly, international students I feel like can get talked about a lot on campus but sort of forgotten in terms of actually how we can make the experience better. So we all know Brexit's coming up, which will be a big concern to EU students, so as and when information comes out about that, I'd really like the Students' Union to be at the forefront of giving that information to our international students, and also making sure when international students come in that they're getting more support than they are currently in adjusting to living in a different country, living somewhere where their family aren't an hour or 2 drive away like some people have here, and not just for freshers who come for their 3 years or 4 years or however long it is for their course, but the students who come for a year abroad or a term abroad, because I feel like they can get a little bit lost between the cracks as well.
Brilliant, thank you very much. And finally, Mariam.
Hi, I'm Mariam, I'm a first year law student. What I propose is that we run a student supporting student scheme. That's where if you see that your friend is in trouble and needs help, whether that's mental health or just general health, you can flag it up to the university. Because I feel if you need help, whether it be depression or anything like that, often it's really hard to reach out for that help yourself. You need someone else to do it for you. You don't know that you need that help. So I think that's really, really important that we have a scheme like that. Currently, there is no such scheme. I know they have your helper mate workshops and stuff like that, but it's not enough. And also, with this scheme, it needs to be quite widely advertised so that people know that it does exist. Another point is I think that we need to be able to book doctors and counselling appointments through the iLancaster app. When it comes to booking doctor's appointments and seeking help, often we can be quite shy about it. Often people, they don't feel like they have the confidence to pick up the phone and say, I need an appointment, I need help. Now, doing this through the iLancaster app means that you can be in bed at 2 o'clock at night and make that appointment. So you're going to receive the help that you need. I think that's really, really important. Also, I think what I'd really like to bring is a Lancaster Pride, like a university one. It's really important to me, actually. What I really love about Pride is it's something that I believe everybody can get involved in. Because you have men, women, transgender people, black, white, no matter what religion you are, and you have your allies as well, which is people who maybe aren't gay but they still support the rights. And that to me is really, really important, because I think it's something that we can all get involved in. It's something that maybe 50 years ago I wouldn't be able to sit here and say, let's have a Lancaster Pride. But now, the way our society is going, the way things are developing, we can and we should. It's a real celebration. Other points, I think that I'd really like to bring about what I'd really like is if we could join, if the freshers could join liberation groups before they even get to uni. I think that's really important, because what I found was someone put a question in student room, the forum. They asked, is it okay to be gay in Lancaster? And I thought, that's so sad. We should offer them the opportunity to join them, so that when they get here they already know that they're going to be fine. There is help, there's support, there's other people like them. I think that's really important. And that's all that comes to mind. That's all that comes to mind.
Thank you very much. As I mentioned earlier, we have one candidate who hasn't been able to join us tonight, which is Seth. They've sent through some points that they'd like me to read, so I'll just quickly do that now. So they've written, I have been part of improving my local community and ensuring that everybody has a voice for as long as I can remember, and I bring that drive and experience to this role. Making positive, impactful change is not something that is new to me. As part of the Manchester Youth Council, I was part of making sure that young people have a voice in who is working for them, and we implemented a system where those applying for jobs working with young people were interviewed by young people, and their opinion was heard and listened to. Creating a community where everybody has a voice is something I'm passionate about. Creating a community where every member feels represented, included, and respected is also very important to me. And then they put in a link to where you can read their full manifesto, which is at lancastersu.co.uk/vote. Interest matching is one of the policies on my manifesto. One of the issues that affects a lot of students is feeling alone, especially towards the beginning of their university career. This impacts the number of students that drop out. I will create a system whereby people input their interests and are matched up with people who share those interests, and also given information about societies and clubs that are relevant. This will allow people to make the choice to engage with others in a one-to-one environment, in a group environment, or both. Many people do not feel comfortable engaging with new people in a group setting, often due to mental health and disabilities, and making sure that creating a peer support system at uni isn't exclusive of these people can only strengthen our community. I want to create a more welcoming, more fulfilling experience here at Lancaster University for everybody, so let's help each other. Vote Seth for welfare and community. So moving on to the more general questions of the debate, and then we'll move on to some more manifesto-specific questions later. The first question, which I'll invite you all to answer one by one, is the following. So a massive part of the welfare and community officer role, obviously, is to work and provide support to mental health services on campus. This is something you've all, I think, at some point touched on in your opening little speech. So the question is, what is one immediate change you would like to make to the mental health services here on campus? Apologies if some of you have already gone into detail on this already, but hopefully they won't mind going into more detail as we've already said. We'll start with Hazel.
Okay, so it's something not specific to the counselling services, but in more general welfare support available in JCRs and liberation groups and things. Similar to what I think it was Emily was saying before, giving welfare officers some training in how to respond when people come to them with things, because although welfare officers are there not to provide welfare support but to signpost people to where they can get support, if somebody comes to you with an issue, you can't really say, oh yeah, that's great, go to those people, because it's not really very helpful, and it can make people feel a bit kind of passed on and not listened to. So I think some training in that respect would be really important.
Okay, thank you. Emily?
Basically, what Hazel just said, really. Like I said, I want to equip welfare officers to know how to deal with these issues. And like I said, if I'm there with my... I don't think I mentioned this actually. I'm going to have, if elected, obviously, my own open welfare hours where anyone at all can come and speak to me, no matter how big or small it is. If they want to come and rant, cry, whatever it is, I will do the legwork and make sure that that's all sorted. Like I said, I've got the 2 years experience in welfare. I'm used to doing this. I know what it's like, and I can train welfare officers to do the same. Pretty much. I'm aware of things like bystander training and the look after your mate workshops. I always sent all of my welfare team and the JCR team to them and cried if they didn't go. Mental health services. It's quite a loaded question really, because there's very little that we can do for on-campus services. Like I said, in my years of welfare officer, I've been told many a time by wellbeing advisors that they're oversubscribed as is the counselling service. And like Anna said, you have to be at crisis level to get one-on-one support. So yeah, basically equipping welfare officers. And even little things like, I know Hazel said that it's a thing of they might come to you and you go, oh yeah, you need to go here. Ultimately, that's what a welfare officer does, unfortunately, because it'd be too much to train them obviously to be a therapist. I'm not promising to do anything like that. So obviously they do kind of need to be able to talk that person down, make sure that they're okay. But if they know who to send them to, what charities, hotlines, anywhere at all that they can go, that they can receive any kind of help, as long as the welfare officers know that and they can point them in that direction, I think that would be a massive help.
Brilliant, thank you. Marion, can we come to you next?
Yes, so for me it was my student supporting student scheme, because I believe that often when you need help, you're not able to ask for it yourself, or you're not quite sure whether you're at a point where you do need help or you don't feel like people want to listen to you. So in that way, having a friend flag it up for you makes it a lot easier, and that means that then it will be the people who are dealing with it will come to you, and I think that will make it a lot easier for people to seek help.
So, thank you very much. And Anna, finally.
Obviously, better disclosure training. Yes, much yes. But if I was to change one, and it's a really small thing, but currently on the emails that get sent out, when you manage by some miracle to get through to the on-campus counselling services, you are told, and it's the last line of the email, you are told if you do not attend one of your prescribed sessions, you will be ineligible for any future help. And as someone, oftentimes people are going because they have depression and anxiety, the two most common, it's an epidemic, right,
yes,
on our campuses. As someone who has been through that process and was told, as someone who has anxiety, was told that you are now ineligible because for various reasons of you are already dealing with mental health problems and you weren't able to make it to the session, you cannot get any help. I would, if I had a magic wand, I would get rid of that line in that email today, because it is horrible and creates so much added pressure for students who are already going and struggling with so much already.
Thank you very much. The next question is to do with the retention rates here on campus. At the moment, I believe 11% of students at Lancaster drop out of university. Although this isn't considerably higher than other universities, it is still, I think we'd agree, too high, or at least above average. So my question is, why do you think this is, and what further steps can we take to support students who are considering dropping out of university? This time we'll start with Mariam.
Okay, well, at the moment, as a first year, I haven't really been through it where I've had friends drop out or anything like that. But I would say that it was the stress, really. I mean, when you first arrive at university, it's much, much more different than college. You know, you don't get the support that you need. And I think academic advisors, do we have them in every subject? Yes. Sorry. I think that your academic advisors should be meeting with you regularly. I think just as a seminar group, if you have like maybe 6 people in the room, if your academic advisor meet with you, it's a lot easier if you're with other people and you're discussing issues that you have, or just little questions that you have as well. And the fact that if somebody else asks a question, that can be helpful to you as well. I think if we implement things like that, it will make dropout rates like a lot lower.
Thank you. Anna.
So I think there are a wide range of reasons why people drop out.
Yeah,
Obviously,
so-
the stress is a big one, but I think as well, just kind of there is a massive jump up just in terms of like the academic attainment level between A levels and university, and there are so many skills that we're just not taught and are just expected to pick up, particularly in areas such as like FAS and LUMS, which are like essay based, and so I would love to see an implementation. It's something that they currently do at like De Montfort University, is that all first years are given just like a lecture on how to reference, kind of essay writing skills,
Would have loved that.
kind of all of those things that we're just not taught and are kind of just expected to do. And so you don't have to go through that process of failing and failing and failing until you finally stumble upon what happens to be the right thing. Like I know for me, like I'm in my third year, I'm still not entirely sure how I write a philosophy essay. I know that sometimes I get it right and I get a good grade, and sometimes I get it less right and don't get the grade I want, and it doesn't seem like no one's ever taught me how to write that. And so even if it was just like a lecture in the first term of the course, teaching students like what their subject wants from them and how they are expected to do those skills, would be really useful in making students feel more comfortable with the subject.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's go with Emily.
Okay. It's quite an interesting one because in my own experience, I've had people come to me, talk to me about wanting to drop out or intercalating. And I've found in my experience a lot of people have dropped out because they realised after coming here and after taking the loans out that actually academia just isn't for them. It's just, and it's very difficult 'cause obviously the university won't like this because it means people won't come, but maybe if there's something that we could do so that prospective students or people that were looking, they kind of have a very good idea of what is going to happen when they get here. Because something I had no idea when I got here. I didn't even think that was my fault, but I didn't even think to look on Facebook or even think about what was going to happen. And it hit me like a train when I first got here because I was not expecting so many essays and having to reference and all of this. So if there was something we could do like that, even if it was just we did something really cute, like we made little videos on YouTube about what it's like to be a Lancaster student or things like that. Another reason I've realised, especially since the maintenance grant has gone, cost of living has really impacted a lot of people. A lot of people who come to me nowadays are people who are stressed because not only are they doing their degree, and a lot of students who talk to me about this are kind of law students and physics students, people who do really demanding degrees, having to take part-time jobs just to get by, which ultimately I don't think is something you should have to do when you're studying, because ultimately studying is your main priority while you're here. So I've said in my manifesto, and my full manifesto when it comes out on Thursday, I'm thinking of bringing quite a few cost of living changes. For starters, circuit, let's not have them anymore. It costs loads, and you've got to pay twice because it doesn't work. So I'm looking at getting different laundrettes in, a lot of them who have shared revenue agreements. This revenue will go back into the Purple Card funding, hopefully, if the university like it. Go into Purple Card funding, hopefully for Central and maybe Spa. I don't know if we can implement Purple Card in Spa, but I'll give it a go. So that essential items such as like bread, milk, butter, cheese, anything that people need to eat, they can be a lot cheaper so people can get by, even if, and maybe if they are working part-time, they can maybe cut down their hours because they won't have to spend so much on food. Maybe.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. And finally, Hazel.
I mean, I'd have to second all of the brilliant ideas everyone else said, to be honest. I know that it's 11% the dropout rates, isn't it? But I know that it's a lot higher for students from minority backgrounds and from disadvantaged low-income backgrounds, and I think that really says that cost of living is a big factor, because the students from low-income backgrounds do cross over a lot with the minority backgrounds, and so it's really about doing everything that we can to lower the cost of living and to give that extra support that we can and do whatever the students feel like we can do to help, and really listen to what they feel like we can do.
Well, interestingly, you should bring up students from low-income backgrounds, because our next question focuses on that. And the question is, how do you think the Students' Union should tackle these sort of more national issues, such as the increase in fees and reduction in maintenance grants, particularly considering the impact that it has on people from low-income backgrounds? Is it alright if I start with you again, Hazel?
Yeah, sure.
Just because you're already talking about it.
I mean, certainly getting getting really involved, and I know we already partially are, but more involved on a national level in campaigning for either lowering or maintaining tuition fees as they are, giving as much support with maintenance loans. Now we don't have grants anymore, at least making sure they rise in line with inflation, if nothing else, trying to make sure that things like rent, really basic things like that, don't rise at more than the rate of our maintenance loans, because if they do, eventually we're going to have more and more money spent on things like rent and laundry and things like that, and less for really basic things like food, which is quite important.
Exactly. Mariam, would you like to come in on this?
Yeah, so one thing that I think that we as students ourselves can work on is budgeting. I mean, I didn't know when I got here how to budget. I've never had to budget anything, and wasn't really given any advice on how to do it. Of course, you know, when you get here, it's all just kind of sprung on you, and you've got no idea what you're doing, and budgeting is the last thing that you think of. I think we need more workshops explaining to people how to do it, you know, what the kinds of things that I didn't even know things that I'd, you know, had to pay for, that I would have to pay for them. So, you know, maybe breaking down the kinds of things that you would have to spend money on, and how much maybe breaking it down per month, per week. I think we need someone actually who could implement talks, workshops to each college perhaps on this. I think there is a university, I'm not sure which one it is, but one of them actually do have an officer actually for people from low income backgrounds, just for them, just to discuss with them how to cope when they get here, and that's possibly something that we could look into as well.
Thank you very much. Emily?
Quite an interesting question. I'm a student from a low-income background. I don't feel any kind of shame in it, nor should I. I'm the kind of benefit scum that you see that the Daily Mail likes to have a go at. That's me. Hello. And I have to say, I've been really lucky enough, because I came here when the maintenance grant was still here, and that's what I live on. And I'd be screwed without it, basically. And as I think it was Hazel said, the increase in rent, that has really changed my budgeting this year. I'm struggling. And again, I really like what Miriam said, to be honest. I think Miriam had the best answer there. Not Miriam, it's Mariam. I'm so sorry. I keep wanting to call you Miriam. I don't know what it is. But even something simple, like Mariam said about having budgeting workshops, even little things like when I was a welfare officer, I don't know if I mentioned it, I was a welfare officer, I did little welfare packs for everyone when they came, and I used to do little booklets of who to go to, what to do. And even in those, you could include budget sheets and meal planners. I think meal planning's a really big one. I think if you know what you're buying to make your meal, you won't end up going, oh, sack it, I'll go and have a Subway. So that's something that could help. Yeah, I think that's me done.
Okay, thank you. And Anna?
Sorry, can I be really annoying? Just answer the question again.
Yeah, no problem. Give me a sec. Just have to scroll up. So, exact wording was, how should, in your opinion, the Students' Union tackle national issues such as increase in fees and scrapping of maintenance grants, particularly in consideration for people from low-income backgrounds?
Okay. So, interestingly enough, Lancaster did used to have an officer. Well, back when we had cross-campus officers as opposed to part-time officers, back in the day, we did used to have a cross-campus officer for students from low-income backgrounds, and that was scrapped when the university throughout its time has decided, like in 2007 when we reached gender equality, that was a fun time, who remembers that? But like, yeah, so like we did used to have one, and so bringing one back might be an interesting thing to look into. I think when it comes to national level in issues, Lancaster is in a fairly unique position in that a lot of the national level campaigns that come out of the NUS and things, organisations like that, are very southern and London focused, and often small, kind of more provincial northern universities like ours get left behind with those. And so I don't think we can't be relying on hoping those campaigns will do the work for us. I think also, unfortunately, like the last couple of full-time officer teams have not had that political nature and haven't had that driving force. Yeah. And this has allowed the university and the higher management to go, okay, the students aren't going to fight us anymore, and therefore it has become easier and easier for things like piecemeal tuition fee increases and like the cost of living to slowly increase on all of us. And for the university to feel like they can get away with this because there hasn't been that student backlash from the students' union. This has left students being massively underrepresented, and the full-time officer team failing in their primary job of representing students. I think all of the ideas that have been stressed are fantastic, and budgeting and all of that's so important, but I think the drive for all of it does have to come from the FTO team, and it does have to be, and it's a hard job, right? But the nature of the job and the joy of the job is that you're only there for a year, and so you do get to stand up to higher management and to say, look, I'm here for a year, it doesn't matter if you hate me at the end of it. It's not my job to be, like, I don't think a good welfare officer is someone who is necessarily liked and is nice to everyone all of the time, but someone who is going to stand up for students, particularly students from minority groups and low socioeconomic backgrounds who sometimes find it harder to stand up for themselves and don't always have that power, to have someone on their side standing up to higher management and saying, no, this is not okay, and to have that political driving force again.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Nice. You got my vote.
So we'll move on to some questions related to the liberation groups which we have here on campus. We have 6 main ones: Women Plus, LGBTQ Plus, Students with Disabilities, International Students, BME students, and Mature students. So we'll hopefully, we'll make time. It's fine. We'll have a question on each one of those, or an issue relating to each one of those. First one relating to Women Plus. So in the UK, unfortunately, 1 in 3 women are sexually assaulted at university, which is a horrifying statistic. I think we all can agree. What would tackling this issue look like on campus to you, do you think? I'll start with Anna. Have a start with you.
So, not an easy question to talk about.
No, obviously not.
Unfortunately, a question I have experience with. I've been working on alongside and helped with the bystander intervention training that's gone on. I think a lot of it is education. I think a lot of the time when these things happen, and they are awful, horrible things for students to have to deal with, but it isn't always malicious. It is ignorance around consent and what consent actually looks like, and what active and ongoing and engaged consent is. And so I think we just have to work harder to educate our students, to make sure that every single student goes through bystander intervention training and understands what consent is. And it's not easy. I'm not saying there is a magic wave of the wand, flick of a switch, and suddenly everyone is a perfectly trained consent giver at all times. But it's teaching, and unfortunately this is a generalisation, but I think it is a fair generalisation, that teaching our young men what it means to ask for consent, and to not just, so much of the time I think so much of toxic masculinity is tied up in what is expected of you and acting a certain way and acting with that macho nature that sometimes gets in the way of really important things like consent. And so teaching that's not how it has to be. And so going through and untying and working to undo all of those layers of patriarchy and toxic masculinity and all of those things to try and get to the root of and have honest conversations with our students about drugs and alcohol as well, and kind of stop pretending that those issues don't exist and that they are intrinsically tied to issues of consent.
Thank you. Very well said. Are you okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. We'll move on to Emily now, if you'd like to speak to us.
Like Anna said, it's quite a difficult and quite a broad thing to look at, and it's something I was asked in the Scan interview the other day actually about what it should look like. And one of the things I did say, because I got asked, was, did the university do enough? And I think the university do a lot. We have the consent talk. Yeah, I saw that. I know. Like, I'm with you. But I know that there's the consent talks and fresher weeks. I know that fresher reps are also giving it, but then it kind of stops dead. That's all it is. And to be honest, I don't think that is... I mean, they do a lot, I guess, but it's not enough just to kind of hold people into a room and say, this is what it is, this isn't it. And I just don't think that's engaging enough. And I think there should be many other ways to do it. And it shouldn't really be a thing of herd everyone into a room and shout at them, because they're not going to listen. They switch off. Like, I switch off in half my lectures and I'm interested in them, never mind going into something like that. Like I said, again, with welfare packs and things that I give out, just as I do, I always, whenever I gave out condoms, I'd always put a sticker on them with just again, doesn't solve the problem, but just a little thing of make sure there is willing, enthusiastic, active consent. It just needs to be more than just lectures and talking about it, maybe posters. One of the things I was going to say, little things, I think even just in Sugar or in town, if we just had, I've seen who does it? You might know, the groping campaigns. They're on YouTube and things like that.
Yeah. Oh, I can't remember.
Well, they're really good. They're really good because it really,
Yeah.
they're a bit uncomfortable. They're very uncomfortable to watch, actually, the adverts for those. But it really gets to the root of the question, like, no one wants it. We don't like it. Don't come up to us in Sugar and just touch us. We don't like it, kind of thing. And even little things like that, if Sugar toilets or just in Sugar, we had little things saying, no to groping. If you do grope, you're getting kicked out straight away. I'm not going to say more security in Sugar because who needs that? But basically just different ways to educate on it. Like, I've not got all the answers. I'm not going to sit here and say, yes, I'm going to make everyone know exactly what consent is, because I can't promise that. But what I can say is that I would definitely, if elected, look into different ways to get that message across.
Thank you very much.
Sorry, do you mind very quickly, just tying on to that, I think Manchester had the Ask for Audrey campaign, which is you can go to the bar staff in any of their club and ask for Audrey, and Audrey is something like that.
You order an angel shot.
Order an angel shot, and that's kind of like a signal that someone is coming on to you that you're not comfortable with, and the staff know you to deal with it without having to go up and be like, this guy is harassing me. And like just campaigns like that are really effective.
Excellent, thank you. Hazel.
I think it is a huge problem trying to get to talk to people not in Freshers Week about it, because you can put on as many talks as you like and share as many posts, but essentially if people aren't interested, they won't turn up to talks and they won't look at posts or flyers and things. So I think that is something we really need to work on. In terms of the consent talk in Freshers Week, I think we need to move away from it being such an oversimplification of it and move it forwards into kind of sex positivity. And something that I'm trying to work on at the moment in the Students' Union is giving really basic actual just sex ed at the same time as the consent talk. And it sounds really silly and loads of people feel a bit embarrassed while it's happening, but we've got a wide range of people coming from a wide range of schools, backgrounds, cultures, countries, and everybody's been given slightly different information, not all of it medically accurate, not all of it accurate in terms of consent, not all of it kind of necessarily good. Some people don't have any, some people have very little. I mean, I came from an all-girls Catholic school and it was basically don't have sex or you will get pregnant or have an STD, which isn't helpful. So I think expanding it just beyond has this person said yes into does this person really want to do it, and do you actually know the mechanics as well as the which I think that's another important thing to consider, which not everyone thinks about and not everybody really wants to think about, but we should.
Exactly. And Mariam.
I think the question is, do people that actually commit such assaults actually come to these talks? Because some of them may not be aware that their actions are inappropriate, and some of them who may be aware aren't interested. And I think what we need the message to be everywhere. And I think stuff like posters with basically the phrase saying no means no, or did they say yes, is something that will get people thinking. Because if you see that every day and you're exposed to those messages, then it is going to get you thinking. At the moment, we don't have that. I haven't been exposed to anything consent-wise. In the time that I've been here, I've not been told about anything. And I don't know about these consent talks that you're talking about. Perhaps there was one, but I wasn't aware of it. So maybe I'm just a really ignorant fresher. But so I think posters is just every day. And I think that what we need to do is, obviously, when you see something day in, day out, you become you begin to not notice it. So what we need these posters to be refreshed, so different messages. So every month or something like that, we need to change them. We need to ask students a different question. So, you know, if it is like no means no, and then the next month, you know, did they say yes? And things like that, I think, are really, really important, because it gets you thinking. At the moment, I think just a little trigger like that can really help. Another thing is, well, after assault is I hate to say it, but inevitable. And afterwards, we will never be able to stop it, but afterwards, what are we doing to help the people? Because there is counselling, but I think it is something that is so prevalent in our society that we need to give special attention to it. Getting a counselling session is so difficult. If you're getting a counselling session 2 weeks after an assault has taken place, for that 2 weeks you are just ruined. You need help straight away, and I think that there needs to be help that can be given straight away, whether it be within a few hours or the next day, that is needed, because after something like that happens to you, you don't even feel human anymore. It's really important to get that help there straight away.
Okay, thank you all for speaking so well on this issue. So the next question in relation to the LGBTQ plus community on campus, what are the main issues you think should be addressed for this community, and how would you go about tackling them? Hazel, you spoke earlier about your idea for, was you speaking about pride, wasn't it?
No,
that was Mariam, sorry.
Yeah.
Mariam, would you like to speak about that first?
Yeah, sure. So for me, the issues, are we talking about the issues?
What would you say the main issue is that at the moment, if I don't know if you've been speaking to any of the LGBT activist groups on campus, but if you do know, then how would you go about tackling them?
Okay, well, the main issue is, I believe that we have a lot of awareness now on LGBTQ issues. Yes, it can still be improved, but I think one thing that's important is inclusion. Yes, you are part of the movement and everything, but I think that we're all people at the end of the day, and I think that's why I would like to introduce Pride here, because it's something that everyone, I believe personally, that everyone can get involved with. We are all people at the end of the day. As for the specific issues, well, that's something that I would like to talk to people about. At the moment, there aren't any specific issues that I'd like to talk about, but it is something that, of course, with the part-time officers, is something that can be addressed. But at the moment, Pride is my main thing, to get everyone involved.
Thank you very much. Emily, would you like to speak about this?
Yeah. Again, I'm LGBTQ myself, I'm bisexual, but I don't attend the meetings myself, just I don't have time, basically. And just, so I can't really speak and say, yes, these are the issues and this is how we tackle them, obviously, but just little things like, I think, like Mariam said, there is a lot of awareness, especially here. We're very lucky to have quite a big and open LGBTQ. But there's just little niggling things, like, for instance, like, I know for me, biphobia is a real thing. I'm constantly getting, oh, how do you know you like girls? Because you've never been with a girl. Like, oh, you're going to end up with a man anyway. You know what? You know, we know. And I think, really now, a lot of attention needs to be brought to trans and non-binary community at the minute, because a lot of the times I've had people come to me with welfare issues. Again, it's people who are constantly being misgendered, even by their lecturers or people like that. A lot of people not understanding what trans or non-binary means. A lot of people who take the mick, and I don't know why. There's just so many people who feel the need to just really have a go at people for their identity, and I don't understand. It's nothing to do with them. Does it matter to any of us if someone else decides they want to use they them pronouns or anything like that? It's none of our concern, and I think that's something that we should really try and get across as a university, really, that it doesn't matter what you think of it. It's not if you're a cis straight person, it's got absolutely nothing to do with you what someone else wants to identify as. So leave them alone, and really that's I think that's the biggest issue right now.
Great, thank you very much. Anna?
So yeah, I think that like a lot of the like blatant out and out homophobia is for the most part obviously still exists, but not as big a deal. Last year, I think Lancaster Pride really proved that. Last year, the fact that it was so tied in not only with the university but also with the wider community really showed that the city that I live in is okay with who I am and that I can be myself. And I also think events like Queer Boots, which is like the LGBT night out in Lancaster, is again fantastic, great. Love Yorkshire House. They always put on a great night. It's fantastic. But I think it's a lot of the like smaller microaggressions and they're like kind of tacit is the wrong word, but kind of smaller things. I think more awareness around things like asexuality as well, and kind of a lot of the time like LGBT groups and LGBT spaces are very sexualized, and kind of it's all about, because in people's heads it's like, well, it's who you have sex with, and it's not at all, right? But that's the way it's perceived. I think as well, unfortunately, a lot of the time these spaces are also quite alcohol driven. So like things like queer boots are fantastic, but a lot of the time these social spaces and these spaces where you can feel safe and included are like focused around alcohol, which can be really difficult for students who have alcohol issues or who don't drink to access. So things like the coffee evening that is put on campus is fantastic, but kind of maybe extending that to town and creating safer spaces in town as well, and just things little like pronouns, just normalizing like asking people pronouns. It's a thing we do in debating, and it's normalized. You go to a competition, you start each round and you get asked for your pronouns, right? And I know it's really sad, but I know in Hull that they go to their trans group and say, come to debating, it's a place where you cannot be misgendered because we will kick people out who misgender you, right? Like, life shouldn't be like that. We shouldn't have to be telling people that there are certain spaces where it is okay. Like, just normalising, like, using people's, like, the pronouns that they identify as, and things like that are so important into creating, like, safe spaces and making sure people feel included.
Absolutely. And Hazel?
So, being the part-time officer for LGBTQ+, I could talk about this for hours and hours and hours. We'll do my best to keep it quiet, or short at least. Pride, I think, so last year was the first time we had Lancaster Pride in over a decade, I think, and it was really successful, and it's happening again this year, bigger, better. This year the university is one of the biggest donors in terms of funding, so I think that's going to be really good in terms of working with the community and getting that tie between the university and the community, and not just the local people but the other neighbouring universities, so the University of Cumbria, the University of Lancashire, well, they county Central Lancashire, sorry. And yes, kind of fostering those ties as well. So that's something in terms of pride. Pronouns. So the Students' Union. Most people in the Students' Union now put their pronouns in their email signature, so where they've got their name and their position things, and I really like that policy because that means that there's all these people who you email and you never meet them face to face, and there is still no possible way that you can misgender them, which in my eyes is brilliant. So I'd really like to see that roll out across the whole university, so in all of the departments, all of the staff, all of the students as well. I think, again, similar to what everyone else has been saying, a lot of the major outward kind of visible homophobia isn't there as much. It still happens on occasion, but much less. And I think it needs to be a bit of a shift now towards focusing on bi-erasure being a big thing. I know it's already been covered, but it is. And pronouns, big thing. I know when I was a fresher last year, I had the really awful experience of my freshers reps going around everyone doing names and things and icebreakers, and then at the end going, what's everyone's pronouns, and then sort of laughing awkwardly and turning it into a joke about those weird things that nobody else uses if you're normal. And for me, that kind of really dissuaded me from coming out and saying I'm non-binary, I use they them pronouns for quite a while. Trying to keep it short, I could literally talk about this for hours. I think Anna had a good point about the alcohol and kind of sex-focusedness of the society. Something that I've been trying to do this year is put more of an emphasis on non-drinking, or at least non-drinking focused socials. So things like open mic nights where you can have a pint if you want, but it's not really about the drinking. And about just having fun things that we can do. We're trying to organise some really fun events that are nothing to do with the fact that you are LGBTQ, because not everything has to revolve around that fact that that is your identity, because we're people just like everybody else. we have different we have differing interests. Not all of us subscribe to stereotypes. You know, some of us like playing bar sports, some of us like playing actual sports, some of us like just... Sorry, where? That's not what I meant.
I'll see you on the pool table, Hazel.
I'm terrible at
Doing so well.
And, you know, people like board games or baking or just having a laugh with their friends. So I think making sure that we can do those things and that events are about, unless there's something that's specific like a coming out safe space, and making sure that it's really clear that they're open to LGBTQ plus people and allies, because I know a lot of people who have felt like they can't come along to things because they don't identify within that identity group, and that's not the intention at all.
No.
So yeah.
Of course, thank you. So moving on to students with disabilities. Obviously there's a lot of construction going along all the time. Well, I can see you. So the question I have for you is how can the Students' Union improve the feedback system for students with disabilities who are struggling to gain access across campus? Emily, sorry, we haven't started with you yet, but you can start now.
Again, I'm going to go off personal experience because, again, that's all I've experienced, really.
It's fine.
I've not so much the student union, but I know the university and especially the disability service, because I'm subscribed to disability service emails. We constantly get emails telling us what's going to be closed and when, and different accessible routes, which obviously no complaints, that's brilliant. Student union wise, I have to say I've not got a satisfactory answer for that, really, other than them being aware of what's changing and what's happening. Obviously with Design the Spine it seems to be a bit random, as in different bits are being built at random times and no one really knows until it's closed off. That's something that maybe if we got a bit more forewarning and we knew maybe weeks in advance kind of, okay, this is going to be closed at this time, so you can plan your routes out and you know which way to go before you even set off for your journey. I think that could make things a lot easier.
Okay. Should we go to next? Hazel.
Ideally for me it would be something with in terms of like the building widths things, that there almost doesn't need to be a feedback system, in that it's already been thought of. So things like the other day Alexandra Square was cordoned off because it was icy, which is really good because we don't want people to slip over, but they cordoned off the disabled access routes, which then meant people couldn't get to their lectures, and that kind of thing. It was relatively quickly rectified, but that kind of thing shouldn't happen. So it's about having those conversations in the first place that make sure that doesn't happen, that students with disabilities, whether physical or mental, are being considered in the first place rather than as a kind of afterthought in reaction to something bad happening.
Anna.
Yeah, I think just adding on to that, maybe actually like talking to our students with disabilities about what is likely to impact them, because like the building work outside the library and like the noise of the building work in general, annoying, but for someone who has sensory issues, makes campus inaccessible, right? Makes it impossible for them to be present. And so kind of talking to our students and knowing what information is vital, not just nice for them to have, but absolutely vital for them to be able to know, and kind of consulting and having those thought processes ahead of time, so it's not fixing the problem, it's the problem never having existed in the first place, right? And kind of having that consultation process with students to know like what the problems are going to be and flagging those up, and like doing real risk assessment on these things, so it's not fixing problems.
And Mary.
I think that what we need to do is we need to update the iLancaster app in real time so that students know what's happening exactly at that point. Emails are all well and good, but when you're like walking around campus and you've got to open your email and you've got to find the email, it can be a bit of a hassle. Now having the iLancaster app explaining to you exactly when and where it's happening, it's a lot easier for students to plan their route, so if they need to get out, they need to leave earlier, to be able to make their whatever it is lecture on time, they can do.
Okay, brilliant, thank you very much. So next question, across the UK at the moment, in this post-Brexit climate that we have, there has unfortunately been quite a large increase in outspoken xenophobia and hate crimes against people who have immigrated to this country. How can the Students' Union offer more support to international students, also considering that with Brexit eventually coming, that EU students are also soon to be categorised in a different way, like in terms of, can't remember the word, in terms of like actual legally classification. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Their status.
Status, thank you.
Yeah.
Anna.
I mean, information, right? Information is vital in these things, but also information for our students arriving on campus. As an international student, you arrive at Manchester Airport a lot of the time. Yes, you get taken on a bus or a train from Manchester Airport to the university. You arrive at your accommodation, and then you are promptly left with no one to look after you, with your family thousands of miles away. You are often not told. So a lot of international students, particularly specifically students who are not EU students, which is what these students will be becoming, have to have a thing called a biometric residency card, which is your kind of legal ID to be in this country. You have to pick those up currently as an international student from an undisclosed location in town.
In Lancaster Town.
In Lancaster Town,
Okay.
but it's not always clear where you have to pick them up from. You are not taken to go and pick this up. Like the emails often have conflicting information. Like things like that, like making it really clear where you have to pick up your legal ID to be in the country from is really useful for our students. Also things like, so I got driven up here on my first day of university, got dropped off, my dad unpacked all the stuff from the car, and then he took me for a food shop. There is no one to do that for our international students, particularly like all international students, whether they be here for 3 years or for a term. That first shop and knowing where to go, having like, even if it's one of our student ambassadors, take them into town, and like our freshers, like a lot of freshers reps do. But if you're arriving like in your second term because you are here for your study abroad for the second and third terms, having someone to take you into town and help you with your food shop and show you where things are, really vital and really important to make sure our international students don't feel isolated and don't feel alone and do actually feel like there's someone there looking out for them.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Emily.
Right, this is going to sound like I'm copying Anna. But basically, Anna's on the right lines, really. In Pendle, we had a buddy system. I'm sure other colleges have done it now, but we were one of the first to do it like a year ago or something, which we found really helped. That easily could be implemented in all colleges. I don't see why not. And again, like Anna said, every term instead of just fresher term, because obviously a lot of international students do turn up second term, third term. Where was I going with that? Again, student union kind of getting into conversations with their international students, kind of learning what their experiences are as soon as they come here and kind of working out the issues there. Like Anna said, and working out how to solve them or prevent them in the future. And even when we were looking for fresher reps, the past 2 years when we've been doing ours, we always look and we ask for people who have more than one language and things like that, so we can pair people up who have the same languages. And we had someone who turned up who was Chinese, had no idea what was going on, couldn't speak a lot of English, and we tried our best. We found one of our reps who could speak Mandarin too, and as soon as they started talking, face lit up, they felt completely safe in where they were and they knew what to do after that. And I just think things like that are really important. We could even, in the student union, instead of it just being fresher reps, there could be appointed people or people from BME and international societies who could offer to do that and just kind of link these people up as and when.
Brilliant. Marion.
I think that information should be supplied upon arrival. This could be through the form of a booklet, just that they find in their room, really, discussing with them, where places like Central and things like that. I mean, I'm in a flat now with all international students, and it's really amazing to see parts of their culture. And I think what we should be doing more of, we should have more events which display their culture, so that we all can learn about it. One thing that I do is I've had 2 Australian flatmates move in this term, and I've been talking to them myself and saying, do you know where places are? Do you need me to take you? And definitely more information is needed, but also I think if we understood more of their culture, it would be helpful as well, for integration purposes as well. I think that's also really important. So yeah, booklets in the rooms.
Hazel?
I think obviously when people get here, this tends to be people's big moment of independence. They go, yes, I'm living away from home, I'm going to do it all by myself. And then you panic and realise you don't know where Sainsbury's is. And
Very relatable.
You go, oh, I've managed to pack everything apart from a pan or, something, a cup. So I think help in terms of those things. I think something that would be worth considering, I don't know how feasible it would be, but if for particularly international students, although not exclusively, those who are arriving at really weird times of night, say because of their flights, having some form of thing, a bit like, I don't know whether this was Bond specific or in other colleges where you could get things like duvets and knife and fork sets and things, having some kind of basic food pack of, not loads of food, but enough of like a bit of bread and butter and some baked beans or whatever, some small thing for a kind of a couple of meals, so that if you're arriving at 2-3 o'clock in the morning, you know that you can come in. It might all be a bit strange and weird and everyone might be in bed or in town, but you have some form of food, so you can go to bed, wake up in the morning and then think about where you have to go.
So moving swiftly on, unfortunately we're running a bit short for time, but should manage to fit these questions in. So, considering that the lack of student engagement with the union is kind of always an ongoing issue, and that only 15% of students at Lancaster are from ethnic minority groups, what should the union do to increase BME involvement and engagement with the union? Who should we start with? We'll start with Mariam.
Okay, well, thing is, there will be BME students who aren't part of the Liberation Group. I myself, actually, I'm not sure. I think, I mean, I'm ethnic, so, but I'm not part of that, just because I believe in integration. I believe we're all people, and I feel comfortable with my background as it is. So I don't feel the need for support as a person. I don't feel the need for support. So that's why I don't get involved in these groups. But there are people who see. I've suffered a lot of racism in my life, but I've learned to, I hate to say it, get over it. It doesn't affect me anymore as such as it used to. But there are people who, there was an incident very recently that happened here, and I think for these people, for the BME group, what do you do like when such racism occurs and stuff like that? These students become really, really upset, and they think that no one is on their side, and that the channels that they go through, like speaking to the dean or whatever, it's not helpful. I think for them, I've really lost trail. Sorry, will you repeat the question? I have lost.
Repeat the question, no problem. So considering lack of student engagement with the Students' Union, which is an ongoing issue, and that only 15% of students at Lancaster are from ethnic minority backgrounds, what should the union do to increase BME involvement and engagement with the union?
Right, okay. So, sorry, getting back to the point.
Don't worry.
So like I said, integration is important. So we should be having events we should be having events for them, but also events which go across all liberation groups, because we are all people. You don't want to be identified by just one thing. I think it's really important. I wouldn't want to be known as someone who is an ethnic minority. I hate it. I would hate it. I am a person. So what we need to do is inclusion. So let's have more events which go across all liberation groups, and that's how you're going to engage them.
Okay, great. Hazel.
I think the liberation part-time officers perform quite a key role here. The primary role of the liberation groups is political, as well as celebrating those identities and the work that needs to be done and the diversity. But I think really giving support to the part-time officers in letting them get their ideas forward, and as well as celebrating the fantastic political work that they do, making sure that there are also events which are both very political and apolitical, so that people can go along to things. And I suppose this isn't specific to BME groups, but so that there are events that feel accessible without you feeling like you have to be super political about your identity, because some people want to be, which is fantastic, and some people don't, which is also fine. So I think it's really about having those just more relaxed environments where people can do things, but it's not necessarily all about the politics of that identity.
Okay, great. Anna?
So yeah, I think a key thing here is that, so we were chatting earlier about retention. And like retention rates, one of the key things that it is linked to is BME attainment gap. And so looking at that, and so using events which are run currently in Lancaster, like Empower and Black Excellence events, and kind of really supporting those and encouraging BME students to, and making sure they get the support and the help that they want. And so working with our part-time officer for like our BME part-time officer to make sure that like these like students are actually being listened to and heard, particularly in a place like Lancaster, which is so white. Like I don't have that lived experience. I can't ever know what it's like. But so listening to our students who do, and making sure that they are heard and they have spaces where their voices are heard and they have support, not only like in and of themselves, but also in things like academia and in their departments, and things like,
Thank you.
that.
Emily?
Kind of two parts. First of all, I think the lack of engagement with the student union is simply because there's very little transparency or even kind of involvement with the student union. Like I said, as a college officer, I had absolutely no interaction. I know other college officers, like events team, they have SEG where they meet with the Vice President of Activities and press-com, things like that. Simply just because, like I said, there's no real transparency. I feel like if more student union officers... Oh no, I've trailed. What was I going on about?
Transparency?
Yeah. But yeah,
Like
It's okay, you didn't do as badly as I did.
no, you did
Right
all
off.
right, mate. You did all right.
our
Kind of run out of things to say because everyone had such great answers. Student engagement. I think if more student union officers kind of were about more to talk to people about these issues, like I just said, and like I proposed again in my bi-weekly meetings, if people all come together, we can find out what it is that BME students need that we can help with. There's somewhere else I was going to go with that. Yeah, like Mariam said as well, not a lot of BME students might actually join liberation groups, so it's very difficult to kind of find out what it is they need if they're not there. But again, if welfare officers were a bit more supported, like international officers or just equality, I know some colleges have equality officers, and just standard welfare officers, if they're available to talk to these people, these welfare officers can feed back to the student union, and if welfare officers can feel like they can speak to the student union, there's that bit more transparency, that bit more cohesion, that might be much more helpful.
I appreciate that it is a bit slightly late. We'll be wrapping up soon, but thank you all for being so on the ball for this thus far. So, following on from that student engagement issue, how could the students' union, or what more could the students' union do than they're currently doing to reach out to mature students? Let's start with Emily.
That's quite a big question.
Sorry.
Just with mature students, I have to admit I've no clue what it is mature students might need from the student union. I'm guessing slightly more inclusivity with undergraduates and mature students are just graduates, with more kind of 18, 19-year-olds.
Yes.
Everyone who could, that's what I meant.
It's fine.
But at the same time, not so much, because a lot of mature students that I know actually have no interest in going to sugar, have no interest in going out, and want more kind of events for them, I guess. So I think, again, more engagement would come about. Yeah, it is getting very late, isn't it? If I don't know, maybe if there were more non-drinking events or quiet events. I know, again, in Pendle, we've had gaming nights and things like that, which is something that mature students might be interested in doing. And even in liberation groups, maybe, I know is there a mature students liberation group?
Yes.
There is, isn't there? Yeah. It's just, I've not heard anything about it for the past year or so. It's not...
There's currently no part-time officer,
Yeah.
and every time there's no part-time officer for a liberation group, it effectively falls apart for a year. So
we'll get him a part-time officer. There we go.
Try it. We're trying.
Brilliant. Hazel, would you like to come in on this?
So again, I'm not a mature student, so I can't say anything firsthand. But I think being careful to not equate all mature students with the postgrad students at all
Mm.
times,
Sorry.
and also not to then treat them all like they're, I don't want to say proper adults. Like not all mature students, are significantly older
Mm.
than the average population. So one of my closest friends is classed as a mature student. She's 23, so she's not that
Scary.
much old. so she is older than the average student population, but she's not so significantly older. So I think it is about kind of what Emily was saying, in making events that appeal to a wide range of age ranges without saying that they are specially for attendance. So you might want specific mature student things in terms of talking about how things can be better, but in terms of social events, not necessarily making them exclusive, because that will probably, I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, but it would be my guess that will probably make them feel more excluded from the average student population than I know some of them already feel. And trying to give a really wide range of social events, so not presuming that because they're mature students they want things like wine and cheese tasting nights, but just things like games, films, those things that kind of cross a wide age range, I suppose.
Great. Mariam?
Well, obviously I'm not familiar with any issues, but the fact that they don't have a part-time officer is obviously a massive issue. But is one part-time officer enough? I'm not sure that it is. I think that we should have maybe some more reps. Often you might not feel comfortable speaking to just the one person. I think if we have a few reps for mature students that they can go approach, that they know that they can talk to about their issues, then maybe that's a way that those reps can then feed back to the part-time officer, and then any issues that we do have can be addressed.
Finally, Anna.
So I think it's important when talking about mature students to make the delineation between like mature students who are like 23, live in Lancaster, are part of like campus and want to have that student experience, and also mature students who are coming back later in life to study, who may have jobs, have kids, all of those kind of things. And I think more focus needs to be put on that second group, making sure that things like inductions, really important talks, social events aren't kind of in the evenings when like people need to be at home to like look after their children and things like that. Making sure that when timetabling mature students, that you're not having their lectures ending at 6:37, and at the opposite end of that, not starting at like 9 o'clock in the morning if you're commuting from a couple of hours away. So kind of just making sure that when you're looking at planning like social events and stuff, you can't have it at like 9 o'clock on a Thursday evening in Lancaster if you're trying to aim it at a group of people who live 2 hours away and have children. Like it just doesn't work, and at the moment it feels like there's this disconnect between like a lot, obviously because it is a university, a lot of things are set up to happen in the evening, and therefore you automatically exclude like this group of mature students purely by the fact that they do have other responsibilities.
Alright, thank you very much, all of you. We were going to move on to more manifesto-specific questions, but because of time limitations, I think what we'll do instead, so that we can still discuss aspects of our manifesto, is if I invite you to ask a question to the other candidates about something you'd like to like clarifying about the manifesto, or something that's come up that's been said tonight that you'd like to get more information on. Then we'll do that now. That's okay. So we'll start with Hazel.
So am I asking generally or specifically?
You can ask generally or you can ask specifically. It's up to you.
Okay. I've got a question for Mariam. So in your manifesto, you're talking about the iLancaster app and being able to book things like doctor's appointments and counselling sessions on the iLancaster app. I really like the idea of the counselling sessions, so possibly the referral process going through the iLancaster app, and once you're in that, being able to book those. In terms of doctor's appointments, obviously the doctors are run by the NHS, and they do currently have an online website which you can do that from, and I just wanted to know if you had any thoughts on how you're going to work with the NHS as its entirety to get that involved into just our university, and whether you wanted it as a national thing between all universities doing that with their own apps and websites, or whether it was just something you wanted to try and work on with our local NHS services.
Well, it was something that I thought about for Lancaster, of course. I know that in general there is a system where you can go, particularly with my surgery, where I can book an appointment online, and you do that using your unique ID. And I think, yes, it would be something difficult, but it's not. It's something that obviously you need to discuss it with them. You know, I can't just come out here and say yes, I can make it happen. But it is important. I think it is something that's really important to everyone that I've spoken to. This idea is the one that they've all been like, yes, it'll make our lives so much easier. And so definitely, if I've got so much positive feedback from it, then it should be something that with talking to the right people, it should be something that we should be able to make happen.
Thanks.
Aaron, would you like to ask someone else a question? I can come back to you later if you'd like.
Please.
That's fine, no problem. Emily.
I'm just going to do a general one
That's fine.
because I'm very boring and I've come into this very welfare officer-y because, that's what I am. I'd just like to ask everyone in here if you've had any kind of welfare experience, and if you haven't, kind of what can you give to welfare officers, and would you be comfortable and confident in helping them do their jobs effectively?
So I have had a bit of welfare experience on both ends, on trying to access welfare, and in trying to say, I'm a bit concerned about somebody, which I could do through my college, but Boland promotes that quite a lot. Again, don't know if that's specific to the college or not. And I think it's really important to work with the welfare officers as much as possible, and to encourage work between the part-time officers and welfare officers. So currently, as a part-time officer, I don't know how to access being able to contact all of the welfare officers from the different colleges, and I'd love to be able to do that, because I think part-time officers and welfare officers can work really well together because there's such a crossover of issues. So I think that's the biggest thing that I'd like to see in terms of welfare, as well as any support that welfare officers come and say they need. Yeah.
I like that. Nice.
Yeah, I think if I can jump. I also have support experience of welfare, both again trying to access welfare, but also as someone who has worked in welfare, being a welfare officer for Women's Plus Forum, LGBT, and also doing a lot of work as equitying and being an equity officer at a lot of different debate competitions. So having people come to you with their issues and trying to deal with that, and that's really hard, right? And so I think disclosure training, like you talk about, really important. But again, it can kind of feel as from both ends, like you're kind of just shouting into this void, and there's no one there for you. And so just kind of making sure there is someone to listen, and again, having that link up between the Hazel just said the really good thing, having that link up between part-time officers and JCRs, particularly welfare officers, but also just kind of, even if it's just making sure that all of the welfare officers, when you start and you have JCR induction and stuff, that you know who VP welfare and community is, even if it's just a pop by, hello, this is my face, and also having that email address and that contact, and knowing that you it is okay to reach out for that help, and being given the contact details of part-time officers, even something as simple as that, as being handed a booklet that has all of the relevant contact information in. I think it would just go a long way to making sure that people feel linked up.
Good.
Can I really quickly
Yeah, sure, go for it.
Again, don't know if this applies to all the other liberation groups, but technically all the JCR welfare officers are on the LGBTQ exec. I don't think they know this. We can't contact them to tell them this.
Okay.
So I think that part-time officer link is really important. Yes, they are.
I did not know this.
So technically we never reach Chorusy because none of them know they're on the exec. Yes.
Oh, no.
Sorry, side point.
That's fine.
I think we need more contact hours for students that aren't part of liberation groups. I think if you're part of a liberation group, it's very easy to go to part-time officer or the president, whoever is running the liberation group. But for students who aren't part of these liberation groups, which I'm guessing is a lot, maybe we should have contact hours with our, the JCR welfare officers, where you can just drop by, talk about any concerns. I think that's something that needs to be put in place, because a lot of emphasis is given to the liberation groups, which is really important, and I'm really proud that we have these liberation groups here. It's something that, you know, we didn't have in college. It's really nice how people are being represented, but for those that are hesitant to join liberation groups, because after all, we are all about cohesion, so something for everyone.
Great. Anna, is there any question you'd like to ask the group or anyone specific?
Yeah, I think just as a group, there's been a lot of talk about like reaching out to all students and making sure everyone feels connected. Obviously, like the Students' Union already kind of does about as much as it can to try and contact the uncontactables, right? We get emails, there are Facebook events, all of these kind of things. How would you go about trying to make sure that students who aren't part of liberation spaces know they can access help and support, particularly like when we're already sending out emails, there's already advice on the website. Like we already have really underutilised drop-in sessions in the Students' Union.
I'd say getting posters everywhere would be really useful, in that people can't avoid those if they're on campus, so yeah, they might eventually stop looking at them, but that means that those uncontactable students might just go, oh, I might find that email, or drop those people a message. And I think possibly looking at something a bit more anonymous where they can voice their concerns. So you can already put anonymous suggestions for things like wanting more water fountains or whatever it is on campus, but something similar for welfare related concerns, so that you can still have personal replies, but a lot of people are very shy about putting their name to their concern. If they're saying, oh, I'm struggling with mental health, or this thing's really bothering me at the minute, or even if they know that something's serious, or whether they feel like something's too silly to kind of go to someone about, even if it's bothering them a lot. So I think some form of anonymous process where they can have things dealt with without them having to feel embarrassed and feel like they're shouting it from the rooftops.
Would anyone else like to come in on that?
Do you want to go?
Well, in my manifesto I wrote that we should have a forum where all students from all colleges can ask questions, and people can answer those questions, so it could be anyone. And now I can't remember if I deleted it, but at one point I did write something about it being anonymous, so I don't know if that's still in there. But so the option to be anonymous, so you can ask these questions if you're not in contact with, say you don't know your JCR very well, so it is a space where you can ask these questions, and the fact that it's anyone in the uni, anyone can answer the questions, makes it more likely you can get your answers,
Can I ask you a quick question?
Yes.
That? Do you feel like it might be problematic or opened up to abuse of the system with having anyone being able to answer it, from people deciding to kind of troll people's questions for a laugh, or giving kind of information that they genuinely think is helpful but isn't, and is incorrect or unhelpful? And how do you think, if you manage to put that in place, that could kind of be avoided? Because
moderators is the best way, because honestly, of course, that's right, but there are times when I've asked members of my JCR a question and they've given me the wrong answer as well, so there is that. Moderators, and well, you hope that everyone is trying to improve the community, don't you? You hope for the best. Yeah, we can always have a negative outlook, and there will be people that will do things like that, but you just hope for the best, really.
Mariam, is there any question you'd like to ask for the group, having had a think? Or to anyone specific?
Could I answer?
Oh, yes, sorry.
It's okay.
Sorry, my bad.
Sorry, the question was...
Helping students
Helping
who are
students
who are not contactable.
That's the one.
That one.
Okay. So again, it's in my manifesto, the bi-weekly meetings and everything like that, all welfare officers and liberation group part-time officers, anyone who wants to get involved, being completely up to date and knowing exactly what's going on. And that's something like, again, they can go back to their college, however, because every college is different, however they see fit to get that information out, they can go and distribute it in the way they want to. One of the things I did when I was vice president for Pendle is I mithered the SER for ages to get a bookshelf just in the sitting room. And now it's a book trolley, but it'll do. And any resources I got from charities, from organisations, anywhere, even things from Nightline, because Nightline have an anonymous online chat thing that no one knows about, simply because no one knows about it, no one distributes this. So little things, like I said, I have this little book trolley full of leaflets, books, anything you need to know about anything welfare, any issue you might have, it's already there. And if welfare officers in this bi-weekly meeting could be given these resources as and when, because I'm really boring, I'm one of them people who will go searching for leaflets and things to order just to give out, because I just love doing it. And even in your welfare packs, one of the things I give out, if anyone in Pendle remembers, I gave out little booklets that had lists of phone numbers and websites and all sorts that went on for pages in case you needed anything like that, because I'm aware as a welfare officer that people don't want to come and talk to you, people don't want to put their face to their problem, people don't want to do that. But and again, contacting the collectibles, it's kind of, how do you do that? But if we kind of leave people to their own devices, kind of they can come and they know that helps there, and no one has to know it's them, no one has to know what their issue is. They can go up, find some reading, some number, something, anything that might help them in any little way, and they can kind of deal with it that way instead of going through the university for it.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Sorry for skipping you out. That was completely
It's okay, I forgive you.
Mariam, is there any question you'd like to ask the group or the people specifically?
Yes. So as we can see here, we're all quite confident people. Yeah, I'm gonna say we're all here. And I find that it is often those people who aren't very confident that suffer, that don't get to have their voice heard. And I think that one of the ways, what I was going to ask was, how do you think that we can improve this for those people that don't feel that it's very similar to the uncontactable one, but how would you reach out to those? How would you reach out? Put me on the spot.
Okay.
Put me on the spot. How would you reach out to those who don't reach out to you? That was very similar. It's very similar.
That's fine. Anyone like to answer?
Do you mean people that aren't very confident?
Yeah, the people that aren't part of liberation groups. How do we address their issues?
Do you mean people who
That aren't
who don't get actively involved in liberation groups,
yeah.
or people who don't fall under the categories of any of the liberation
people
groups?
that don't get involved.
Right. Okay.
But also one of my main things was that we don't have a liberation group for men. Do we? No, we don't. We only have 6, and that's so upsetting that we don't have one for men.
Why?
Why do we not have one?
We don't have one because they're about political. The liberation groups are primarily about political activism for people who are traditionally at a disadvantage.
Okay.
So the theory being that
Right.
women and non-binary people are generally speaking, not exclusively all the time,
Yeah.
at a political and socio-economic disadvantage. So with obvious exceptions of a very poor working class man being at a worse advantage than like Kate Middleton, say, so that's why we don't have a male focused liberation group.
I still disagree with that. I think
That's fair.
I think that we should have one.
That is
Um,
a fair opinion.
Yeah.
To that, I would say the whole world is a liberation space for your able-bodied cis white straight man.
Yeah.
But my worry with that is a liberation space for men is that it becomes a sounding board for the worst forms of masculinity. And a lot of times, a lot of problems. So I have 2 younger brothers. Male mental health is a massive personal thing for me. A massive personal, it's awful, right? I think a lot of those issues are tied up in issues that feminists are also working to tackle. A lot of it is tied up in what is expected of gender roles and societal norms and patriarchy and all of those things. And so I think that groups like Lancaster University Feminist Society, which is open to absolutely everyone, is already doing that work. And if, as a man, you feel you need a liberation space, I think there are already those spaces available. I think groups like FemSoc already provide that space, that if you want to get involved and you want to make the change, those spaces already exist, and we don't necessarily need a separate group. Because I also I think the optics of that, and like
It does,
imagine the Tab article, right? Basically, at the end of the day,
it does risk becoming a kind of echo chamber for those toxic, the kind of entire concept of toxic masculinity.
Mhm.
yeah, no one wants the physical representation of the red pill thread on Reddit, right? Basically.
Well, I think you do have a point with like the mental health stuff. Like again, but I kind of think that it's something for colleges and kind of welfare officers in a way. Because one of the things, like I say, in Pendle, we always do a massive Movember event, and instead of just raising money for Movember, is the big thing we do. We do a lot of silly charity stuff like lip sync extravs and bar sports tournaments. But one of the things we make sure to do in that month, and we do it all the time, obviously, but in that month especially, we always try and get resources from Campaign Against Living Miserably, a lot of kind of men's health charities, a lot about cancers that men get,
The
things
men's.
like the men's and the things they get. And we do make a concerted effort because we know a lot of men, if they do have issues, they're less likely to come forward and they're less likely to speak to someone. But again, that's something that can be kind of implemented in welfare officers, as in they kind of have that understanding and they know how to deal with that, if that makes sense, rather than the liberation group. But it is, I understand where you're coming from, yeah.
I know a lot of the work with the Grow Our Minds campaign, which has been brilliant. Shout out for that.
Go, Laura.
A lot of the work with that has been about starting those conversations about mental health and a kind of good mental health practice without having to consider whether you identify in any of those groups. So it's not about your political identity, it's just about you needing help and you needing to think about your mental health. So I know that's been not ignoring the fact that you might fit into I don't want to say disadvantaged identity, a liberation group, but that I think has been trying to account for everybody.
Yeah, I think one thing we can all agree on is that we need better publicity and awareness of the services that already exist on campus to make sure that everyone can access them and get the help that they need.
Okay, great. On that note, I think it's about time we wrapped up. But thank you all so much for coming. Sorry if it's gone on so late, but I think this has been a really productive discussion. I hope everyone watching and listening enjoyed it. I certainly did. If you'd like to see our candidates back in action, as it were, the hustings are on Monday. Where are those?
Barker House Farm, 6 p.m.
Barker House Farm at 6 p.m.
Cartmel.
At Cartmel.
Yes. If you're not sure, wander down to the south end of...
Thank you very much. So yeah, if you'd like to read any of our candidates' manifestos, they are online at lancastersu.co.uk/vote. Join us tomorrow where we have a triple whammy of debates to round them all off. It's gonna be insane. Everything's gonna be kicking off. We've got union development, President of the Students' Union, and Vice President in Education. Until then, thank you very much. I've been Alex George. Thank you again to all of our candidates, and we will see you at 6:30 tomorrow where we will kick off our triple bill. Thank you very much.